Good afternoon, class. This is your chapter review for chapters 10, 11, and 12, final reviews of the semester. Chapter 10 is on the news media. News media is interesting. There's 4 different types of media. We have newspapers, which people very seldom read anymore. They were first printed back in the 1690s. They were used to educate people and keep people informed on what was going on, but now, as you'll see later, we have news given to us more on a digital platform. You have something called yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is sensationalized stories that are not based on fact, stuff that you get out of National Enquirer, things of that nature. That's called yellow journalism. Another type of news media is muckraking. Muckraking is what we've known as investigative journalism. That's what you see a lot of times in your big newspapers like the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, where they have these investigative pieces that they do on a whole host of things. Most recently, a lot of it has been on politics, political things, due to the nature that we find ourselves in. So that's called muckraking, and that's investigative journalism, where they try to bring out things that are considered to be injustices, and they want us, the people, to know about them. Magazines, that's another form of media that we use, that we read. Time, Newsweek. Time is still pretty important. People still want to know who's the person of the year. Radio, not a lot of radio, but it started being used in the 1920s. Giving out political information. Franklin D. Roosevelt did what was known as the fireside chats, where he would sit down and talk to the American people about what was going on, and that really created some calmness, and it also gave the people confidence in the president. Television was introduced in the 1940s. It has been the most influential form of getting out information, especially about our politics. As you know about the ads, and as we were in the political season, that's all we saw was political ads from everywhere and everybody. So that's still the most influential way that candidates get out information. What is the power of the media? The power of the media, it does several things. One, it sets the agenda. What do I mean by that? It has the ability to tell us whether or not something is important or not. So months ago, it was really important about the kids in the cages down at the border. Well, they stopped talking about it. Are those kids not important anymore? So that's what agenda setting is. They set the agenda because they tell us, by them giving us the news, what's important. They interpret the news story. So they talked about the children in the cages, but that was it. And then months later, we find out that they don't even know where over 500 or 600 and some odd of those parents are that belong to those children. And so they interpret the news by only giving us bits and pieces of what they want us to know. They have the ability to persuade. Advertisements do that quite often. You probably don't even want a bowl of cereal, and you see a cereal commercial, and all of a sudden you want some cereal. Advertising. It gives us the ability to give information about our politicians. Based on the ads that they put out on our politicians, it determines whether or not we think that person is trustworthy or not, based on the amount of negative ads and or positive ads that are placed out there. The president has the way, as it relates to persuasion, to determine, let us decide on whether or not what he's saying is true or false. Bush did it with 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq. Obama did it with the Affordable Care Act and also the night in which he killed Osama bin Laden. Trump has done it with all the misinformation about the COVID-19, the misinformation about our election process. So because of that, you have people that don't believe, and that's the power of persuasion. And then it socializes us. It shapes our culture and our values, what we value as a society. So media and elections, the link between the candidate and the voter, that's how we get our information. Negative campaign works. It worked 4 years ago against Hillary Clinton. They created her to be this monster, and she really wasn't a monster, but how the media portrayed her is what came out. So that's what that was. There's some regulation over our media, the FCC, which is the Federal Communication Commission. It oversees our radio and our television. There used to be something called the Fairness Doctrine that made it necessary for both sides of the story to be presented. That was repealed by Ronald Reagan back in 1987, probably before some of you guys were even born. It also requires equal time, which means that if Trump is on TV talking about something and spends an enormous amount of time and the media covers it, the media is supposed to do the same for the opposing person. So as much time as Trump was on TV, Joe Biden or somebody in Biden's camp should have been on TV as well. As it relates to advertising it. But it doesn't apply to him showing up on Fox News every morning, him as in Trump, showing up on Fox News every morning. It doesn't apply to that. The right of rebuttal. If someone is attacked on TV or radio, that person who was attacked needs equal time to respond. And the government cannot censor what the broadcasts are airing on their networks. Two things you should know the difference between libel and slander. Libel, if a person has been written about falsely, and malicious words have been written about them and it damages them, that is called libel, okay? Libel, if a person has been written about falsely and those malicious words causes them damage, that is libel. Slander is when a person has been spoken about falsely and the malicious words have been used. So you have slander and libel. Libel is written, slander is spoken. What happened? There was a case, New York Times versus Sullivan in 1964. The person had to prove that what the media did had malicious intent. And so this particular case ruled in favor of the media, which was the New York Times, which gives them all the control. So just remember, our media is very influential in how we think and feel about, especially about our candidates on a political level, what we think about what's happening in society, what we value, what we believe, based on the stories that we hear. So we stopped hearing about the children in the cages down at the border. They no longer became important. How the media has portrayed this pandemic is important in terms of what could they have done differently when the misinformation was being fed? What part did the media play in misinforming the American people? So that is chapter 10 on the news media.